Home sales across California just hit a 30-year low. Not since 1995 have fewer houses changed hands in a single month. Median prices in Los Angeles dropped 11% year over year. San Francisco saw inventory surge by 42%. And across the Central Valley, newly built subdivisions sit half empty, their model homes gathering dust. This isn't a correction. It's a structural shift. So what's really happening behind the curtain of California's housing dream? For decades, California real estate has been the ultimate wealth generator. Buy a home in 2010, sell in 2020, retire early. It's the story millions of families have lived, the foundation of California's middle class. But that formula is breaking down. For homeowners sitting on seven-figure properties, equity is evaporating faster than they can track. For first-time buyers who've been waiting for affordability, the drop in prices isn't helping because mortgage rates have tripled. And for the tens of thousands who moved to California chasing tech jobs and sunshine, the calculation no longer adds up. When you're paying $8,000 a month for a three-bedroom in the Bay Area, and remote work just opened up Nashville and Austin at half the cost, the equation changes. So here's the deal. California's housing market isn't just cooling. It's entering a phase that could redefine the state's economic future for the next decade. Let's break down what's really going on. Start with the numbers that matter. In September 2024, California home sales dropped to 239,000 units annualized. That's the lowest figure since the early 90s. Compare that to the 2020 peak of 485,000 units. We're talking about half the transaction volume in just 4 years. That might not sound catastrophic on paper, but for a state this size, it means thousands of homes sitting unsold every month. Listings pile up. Days on market stretch from 30 to 90. Sellers start dropping prices. Median home prices tell the same story. Los Angeles fell from $915,000 to $810,000 in 12 months. Orange County saw similar declines. Even historically resilient markets like San Diego are showing cracks, with inventory up 38% year over year. And then there's migration. Over 340,000 people left California in 2023 alone. Net outflow. Texas gained 110,000 of them. Florida took another 90,000. Arizona, Nevada, Idaho, they're all absorbing former Californians. When people leave, they sell. When they sell into a falling market, prices drop further. It's a cycle that feeds itself. Construction permits are down 40% statewide. Builders are walking away from projects mid-phase. In Sacramento, 3 major residential developments were paused indefinitely. The cranes stopped moving. This is what the beginning of a housing collapse looks like. Root causes. So why is this happening now? 3 major forces are converging. First, interest rates. Mortgage rates climbed from 2.8% in 2021 to over 7% by late 2023. For a $600,000 loan, that's the difference between $2,500 a month and $4,000 a month. Same house, same buyer, 60% higher payment. Affordability vanished overnight. The buyers who could stretch to make it work in 2021 simply can't in 2025. And the ones who locked in low rates back then, they're not selling. They're trapped by their own good fortune, unwilling to trade a 3% mortgage for a 7% one. This has created a bizarre gridlock. Inventory rises because new sellers are forced to list job changes, divorces, retirements. But transaction volume collapses because qualified buyers disappeared. Second, remote work and migration. The pandemic broke the geographic constraint. If you don't need to commute to Mountain View 5 days a week, why pay $1.8 million for a modest house in Sunnyvale? Suddenly, Boise made sense. Austin made sense. Miami made sense. Between 2020 and 2024, over 1.2 million people left California. They sold their homes into an already soft market. They took their equity and buying power to states with lower taxes, cheaper housing, and comparable quality of life. And here's the painful part for California. They're not coming back. The people leaving aren't retirees cashing out. They're young families, tech workers, middle management professionals. the exact demographic that used to anchor demand. Third, cost of living fatigue. It's not just housing. It's everything. Gas is $1 more expensive than the national average. Electricity bills in summer routinely top $300. Property taxes on $1 million home run $12,000 annually. State income taxes can hit 13%. People are simply fed up. Rising costs, hidden fees, and endless regulations have pushed buyers toward breaking points. When you're spending 70% of your income on housing and taxes, there's no room left for life. And so they leave, or they stop buying, or they wait, hoping for a crash that might never fully arrive. So what are developers and officials doing about it? Not much. Or more accurately, not enough. Major California home builders like KB Home and Lenner have slowed production significantly. They're sitting on land banks, but refusing to build into a declining market. Why finish homes no one can afford to buy? In the Bay Area, some developers are offering incentives, rate buydowns, free upgrades, closing cost assistance. But these are Band-Aids. A 2% rate buydown doesn't solve a 40% affordability gap. Local governments are stuck in their own gridlock. Zoning reform has been discussed for years, but NIMBYism remains powerful. Neighborhoods resist density. Environmental reviews delay projects by years. The very policies meant to protect Californians have made housing nearly impossible to build. There have been efforts. Senate Bill 9, passed in 2021, was supposed to unlock more housing by allowing duplexes on single-family lots. But implementation has been slow and the impact minimal. As of mid-2024, fewer than 5,000 units have been approved statewide under SB 9. Compare that to the 180,000 units California needs annually just to keep pace with population and household formation. It's not even close. Some cities are trying creative solutions. Sacramento launched a first-time buyer assistance program. San Diego fast-tracked affordable housing permits. Los Angeles rezoned transit corridors for higher density. But these are incremental fixes to a structural crisis. The scale of the problem vastly exceeds the scale of the response. And while officials debate, the market is making its own decisions. Prices fall, buyers leave, inventory grows. From my point of view, what's happening in California feels less like a collapse and more like a reckoning. I've walked through neighborhoods in the East Bay where for sale signs outnumber cars on the street. Subdivisions in Riverside County where every third house sits empty, driveways stained for months without use. These aren't ghost towns. They're places where the dream of homeownership met the reality of modern economics and lost. There's a strange quiet in these communities, not the peaceful kind, the uncertain kind. You talk to locals, the ones who stayed, and they'll tell you stories. The young couple next door who sold and moved to Phoenix. The teacher who gave up and rented instead. The retiree who thought their home equity would fund retirement. Now watching Zillow estimates drop month after month. These aren't statistics. They're families who bet everything on California and are now questioning whether they made the right call. What strikes me most is the sense of inevitability. People saw this coming but couldn't stop it. Interest rates were always going to rise. Remote work was always going to spread. Cost of living was always going to matter. But California operated under the assumption that demand was infinite, that people would always pay any price to live here, that the weather, the jobs, the culture would override every financial warning sign. That assumption is breaking. And here's the uncomfortable truth. This isn't just a housing story. It's about what happens when the engine of the California economy, real estate appreciation, starts running in reverse. Homeowners lose equity. Cities lose tax revenue. Builders stop building. The wealth effect that funded restaurants, retail, services, it contracts. You can see it already. Storefronts stay vacant longer. Small businesses close. The vibrancy that made California feel alive starts to dim. This isn't dramatic collapse. It's slow erosion. And in some ways, that's worse. Because it's harder to recognize, harder to reverse, and harder to escape. So where does California's housing market go from here? Short term, expect continued pressure. Inventory will keep rising as long as sellers are forced to list. Prices will drift lower, especially in the most overheated markets. Transaction volume will stay suppressed until either rates drop significantly or prices fall far enough to restore affordability. Neither seems likely soon. Long term, California faces a fundamental question. Can it remain the aspirational destination it's been for a century, or does it become a place only the wealthy can afford? Right now, the market is answering that question, and the answer is encouraging. If migration trends continue, California could lose another 1 million residents by 2030. That's 1 million fewer buyers. 1 million more homes on the market. A downward spiral that becomes very difficult to stop. There are scenarios where this stabilizes. Interest rates could fall back to 4%. Tech could boom again, bringing back high-earning buyers. Policy reforms could unlock supply and ease affordability. But those are optimistic scenarios. And optimism, when it comes to California housing, has been in short supply lately. Maybe things will stabilize. Maybe they won't. But one thing's clear. California's housing story isn't just about money. It's about what happens when an entire dream starts to crack. When the promise of prosperity meets the limits of reality. When the golden state begins to tarnish. And for the millions still here, still holding on, still hoping it gets better, the wait continues. I'll keep tracking the story as it unfolds, because whatever happens next in California will ripple across the country. So if you want to see where this goes, the data, the trends, the real stories behind the numbers, make sure to subscribe.